And welcome. My name is Russ Porteous and I am your host for this evening on Reality Talks as we talk about The Block. And I am joined by my friend and colleague and co-host, Peter Karaglanis. Peter, welcome to the show tonight. What happened in your eyes this evening?
How are you, mate? Just getting this ready. Sorry about that,
mate. Well, we immediately go live straight after the show. So we've got literally 30 seconds while the countdown happens and we swap over. And so sometimes it can be a bit challenging. And I haven't even tested my microphone yet, so I don't know which microphone I'm actually using. I've got this one on my lapel. Oh, it seems to have fallen off, and I've got another one in here. So while you talk for a second, I'll just check my microphone.
Yeah, look, it's working well. I got a little delay as I was running upstairs, which is a fair old trot. My wife goes, "Do you mind passing me the remote? I want to look at the Hermes bag again," which we'll get into tonight, or the Grace Kelly bag. For those who know, my wife was most excited seeing that. So this week, for those who were watching, it was a really short week. What they don't tell you what the public holiday was, my wife and I are discussing, and we're thinking it might have been running into Easter. Now, if it's a short week because of Easter, it means that the following week, the Monday, will also be a public holiday. So we'll only know on Sunday night, whether we're going to have 2 short weeks. So for those who may have come in tonight, we saw some shenanigans still going from the meeting earlier in the week. And so we found that Leah, the one who called it, is still smarting over Kyle's calling to account, her calling a meeting without speaking to anyone else. So as we'll just recap, Steph and Gian were the centre of the discussion, and it was over Steph's dad, Nick, helping one night. The truth was, at the end of it, look, he was supposed to be, brought in, go through a little bit of pre-training. He didn't do that, as it turns out. But the only real thing he did was just a little bit of measuring and helping hold onto a screen while it was installed. So, it was a bit of a, bit of a storm in a teacup. But, what can you do? You got no sound, Russ? Just so everyone knows, the guy's got about 50 mics at his place.
Swap over to the AirPods. Not quite as good audio. And I don't know what it is, actually. I have a microphone in my pocket, which I don't leave on because otherwise it just takes a little too long to connect. So, yeah, seriously, this is 2 guys who enjoy watching The Block, having a chin wag at the same time. So we'll just swap back over to my audio and pick out my other. Should sound a lot better, I would imagine.
Yeah, it's coming in a bit better.
Yeah. I've taken a few notes, and I do mind maps for every episode. Yeah, because that's just how I think. And I keep a copy of it on my laptop while we're recording this. I'm broadcasting to a camera in a spare room in our house, and I've got some lighting, and we just have a chin wag because we enjoy the show. So, Pete, I just wanted to draw your attention to the fact that we have guests who are watching. We always love to know where people are watching from. Most of our comments happen after the live stream. But I'm always interested, if people are watching, let us know where you're watching from. And if you've got any comments about the show, or you comment on something that we're talking about, please let us know. We're always interested, and we can flash you up on the screen and we just discuss something you've got on your mind. So before we get into this evening, there's been a fair bit of news in the last couple of days, which I've posted on our Reality Talks stream, about the valuation of the homes, and the fact that there's bickering between some of the contestants has really put a lot of the viewers off. What's your take on that, Pete?
I was actually reading an online article from Mamma Mia magazine tonight, And it was really interesting. It was why we've switched up off the block. And it really began, I believe it was Monday night when they called the meeting. And so the writer of it had been watching it virtually every year since it started. So she's a veteran of it. She now has a daughter. She was enjoying watching it with her over the past years. But she felt what was foisted on Steph and Gian by Leah and Ash was nothing short of bullying. And when she was expressing, as the writer was saying, her mental frustrations, she felt that Leah totally talked over her. It really rubbed her the wrong way. And she said she was so glad that Kyle actually stood in. He was essentially like the knight in shining armor. And it miffed her so much that that she switched off. Interestingly, I see it now. It is a competition. There's got to be a little bit of drama in there, but I'm getting a little bit annoyed that they've sort of fit to try and stretch this out over a whole week. And it's what I'm looking for is, I don't want a little bit of drama, but they're over egging the pudding here, and it's always on the same subject. And so, what do you think, mate?
Yeah, I read the same article on Mamma Mia, and I tend to agree. I don't like. My value system is more about making sure that I don't like the gossip. I don't like the conflict. What I prefer is to focus on the contestants, and I think the producers here have probably latched onto this one right at the start. I think as we've gone on this week, some of that nastiness seems to have disappeared a bit. Maybe they're refactoring, the editors are refactoring some of the episodes to be released over the next few weeks, because I think we've still got another 11 weeks to go. So it'll be interesting to see how the editors, juggle, the public backlash against the nastiness of the first week. So let's just dive into the homes. I want to cover off a couple of things tonight, which haven't been covered yet. I talk a lot about safety on the job site. That's clearly evident with the high-vis and some of the tools and personal protective equipment that are being used. I noticed that they're all using platform ladders now. On any construction site, platform ladders are the standard these days. And the reason we use platform ladders is to give us those 3 points of contact. But I do want to cover off the sustainability approach, which I don't think is being covered. And I can't remember in previous seasons of the block whether they discuss sustainability and the environment as part of the construction process. So that's something I'd love us to think about. And maybe on Sunday night when Frances joins us, maybe that's something we can discuss with her as well. But house number one, my only note was that's Kyle and Leslie, was just still a little bit of gossip there. So any comments on house number one and how they're going so far?
Yeah, I thought house number one, so with Kyle and Leslie, just having a quick look at my notes here. I think the Hermes bag was a bit that stood out there. You may ask, why that was. I think what it does is it becomes a focal point. So for those who may not have noticed, Hermes have got a bag, and it's called the Grace Kelly edition. And so as they were starting to fit out with Kinsman cupboards and like wardrobes and things like that, it then became a focal point for their styling to actually win the prize. So it's a $20,000 Hermes bag that will go to a winner's house, plus $20,000 in cash to go towards Kinsman cabinetry as you go on, which is a great win. We all know Kinsman's a fantastic product. I think tonight with House One, they really didn't go a lot into it. It was really interesting. I was actually surprised they actually didn't talk too much about it.
Yeah, I agree, Pete. I'm just dealing with people who are commenting with people who are watching our live stream. So sometimes you catch me and I'm in the middle of typing something. Tim, who is our production assistant, is not with us this evening. So I'm doing the switching as well as hosting. You're going to say something, Pete?
Yeah, I just thought that there wasn't tons actually. There wasn't a huge focal point on House One tonight. They have on other nights. What I'm actually starting to pick up in patterns, which is very different from last year, is they're only focusing really on 2 homes each night, maybe 3. And as they're going through the nights, so we get the 3 nights during the week, they're divvying it up where they're going in a little bit deeper. And so that's what I noticed tonight. I thought House One really isn't getting the the attention. Except there's some friends over. They did their Airbnb tonight because they had Leah and Kyle over, and that was the main thing they had there. That was the only thing really.
Yeah, and I've shared that my mind map and house number 1, which is up here, it's got almost no notes against it. So I'm the same. There wasn't a lot of discussion about house number 1 this evening. House number 2, which is Leah and Ash. Yep. We saw that Leah dealt with the conflict with Kyle during the episode, and it's, to me, it came across as very superficial, but at least. And the thing that I talked about a few nights ago, maybe this time last week, was if you're going to deal with somebody, I think if you've got a challenge with somebody, go to that person first. Don't just start gossiping around town.
Well, speaking
so at least
block parlance, she painted herself into a corner, and she really didn't have a way out. And so she should have really gone over and spoken to Kyle much earlier. I actually think it was building more in her mind than in his. And you can actually tell by the demeanour that Kyle and Leslie are actually focused on the task. They just want to give them
very much so.
Yeah, and that stands out. And I don't know how much of that is their demeanour at home. Kyle, I'm talking about Kyle a little bit, but because he's a fireman, they're really process-driven under intense pressure. And so that training would come out during the block because it's about training and getting things done orderly, but under intense pressure.
Yeah. It reminds me that the only note that I had against house number 1, which is Kyle and Leslie, was the gossip. And that was the gossip about the fact that their windows were blacked out. And so when the production crew asked them why the windows were blacked out, just to keep the heat in so that they could help cure the paint.
Well, not only that, they actually didn't have some windows in. That's why the tarps were over.
True. So that is true.
In house 2, thing that I really love is the smart bed. I actually think that Larry and Ash are smashing it out of the park with that one. So if anyone who doesn't know, it looks like just normal cabinets against one wall. There's I think it's a queen size bed that pops out. So, and then either side of that's more cabinetry that you can just store things away. I've seen them in the flesh. We use it in some of our product range for clients. It is a fantastic product. It's not a cheap one, but it really maximizes effectiveness. And the other thing that I actually really like was that Leah had sought out an artist. It's a Melbourne artist. It's called the Rosenberg Collection. And so we saw some of the artwork come in tonight. So she's already starting to think of styling way before the physical premises is finished. And I think that's smart.
The other, so I had the same note that they had the fold down bed, but there was a moment with Scotty and Shelley where they talked about just having these chairs and ottomans and it perhaps feeling a little odd. I understand the dilemma where you've got a fold down bed and you need the space. So, in presenting the home on Sunday night, do you think they should have the bed folded down or folded up?
Yeah, up, because then the real aha comes when it goes down. In fact, when you see it for the first time, I remember, I'd seen it online. That's how I became aware of them. But when you see it come out for the first time, it is an aha moment. And so you wouldn't want to lose that. It makes for great video anyway.
Yeah, that'll be interesting. House number 3, there was a lot of focus on the power tools, not because it was a short week and public holiday, the power tools. It was also, this was Christy and Brett they certainly demonstrated that there was a lot of tension between them.
Yep.
The other thing that they talked about was the cabinetry. Now, I wonder, whether they focus, this is they're kind of giving away a little bit of the story here by focusing on the power tools so much for house number 3. But, it'll be interesting to see how that pans out for Sunday night.
Yeah, what I thought was interesting with House 3 was as it went on, it came down to painting, which was would have been the Friday when they were actually filming. This is really, really important. Brett wanted to cover everything. So they've got furniture in there. They've got their beautiful Velux windows in there. They got their rails from their staircase. And so he was about, if we're going to spray in here or roll, let's make sure we cover everything. Christy just wanted to get into it. She's like a bull at a gate. And I can tell you firsthand, the shortest way to do something is spending a long time preparing and covering surfaces so that when you paint, you do your things, that you actually haven't got overspray on windows, on frames, on furniture, because I will tell you, it becomes an inordinate amount of time to try and clean it up afterwards. It's just terrible. So Chrissy was getting frustrated. Brett was actually on the ball. He knew what had to happen next. And that's the thing when I find, like the painters we use, the reason I use them in my business is they will spend probably about 40% of the job in preparation. And that is in covering surfaces, cutting in. We do what's called a level 5 finish, which we actually haven't seen here. So what a level 5 finish is you get like a standing disc. It's got a laser level on it. It extracts at the same time as you go. So they're about the size of a big dinner plate. So we do all the surfaces, ceilings, everything, and then we have a smaller one for doors and everything else. And what that means is the surface is like a mirror finish. And when you paint, you don't get any orange peel. So if you have a look at a lot of places when they roll or paint, you get these little divots. It's called orange peel. Looks terrible. So this is what I'm liking about Brett. He's like, let's just do this properly from the get-go. It feels slower, but it's quicker.
Yeah, I thought that was interesting too. Over to house number 4 with Steph and Gian. So they're the ones with the cabinetry and the floating bed with a big fireplace.
Oh, loving that. No, they did something really interesting. So we're starting to see, and I surmised this last week because they were in the firing line, and you and I have chatted about this quite a few times, that I believe the table's going to turn and we're going to see Steph and Gian start to shine after the first week, and that's what's happening. Their demeanour together is actually really quite good at the moment. They're feeling confident. One of the big criticisms they had in their first bathroom was those faux exposed beams that just look terrible. So what they've done with the beams is they've encased them in plaster. Just really, it's going to work well with the room. They're on top of things, so their planning, their execution is really good. And they've got a massive spa out the back of the property that was there from the previous owners. And Gian was like, he's called Scotty, can we sell this thing? So Scotty thought the retail value was around 50. He thought they might be able to get 20 for it. I don't know. I didn't see 50 grand in that spa, but then again, I haven't bought one.
No. But what they did reveal is that every home gets a pool, a plunge pool.
Yes.
Which is interesting. So I'd imagine that's maybe fiberglass and then dug into the backyard. So that'll be interesting to see. I think they said that's coming next week, but we might not see it for a couple of weeks.
But that was off the back of the spa. And here's the key thing was if they got 20K for that spa, that's around 7% of the original budget of 250K. So, to get a 20K injection gives them lots of wiggle room as they start to move on into the block. So I could actually see Gian's brain clicking in to other possibilities, other ways of being really excellent at what he does. And Yeah, that's the bit that I really like. We're starting to see these two just click so well, and I hope that continues.
Yeah, that will be interesting. I look forward to seeing the room reveal on Sunday night. Now let's finally get to room number 5. That is Eliza and Liberty, and they look like there's a bit of chaos there, but they're the only ones that have got this workspace, which you talked about a couple of times, in their room. So they've got both the kitchenette, a work from home place, and a bed. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. I actually really like the idea of having a workspace in a guest part of the house.
Yeah, I think it's quite relaxing. So in front of my studio here, I've got a massive screen. I've got a really nice lounge just over here. And so what that meant, and I'm not going to spin the camera around so you can have a squeeze, but what it means is that often as I'm working, I'll come off, which is a really large, so my workbench is probably about 3 meters wide, long, not wide. And so sometimes if I'm just in another creative mode, I'll go and sit over there. I'll use the TV, I'll click into it via my phone and my computer, and I'll use it as a screen. And so what it does, it's a much more relaxing vibe to work in. And that's why I clicked onto it straight away. It was really good. The other thing that I absolutely love about their girls, I just love their nonchalance for everything that they're doing. And I don't know, I reckon these two girls are super smart. They're just not wound up. And they did have an eye for one of the tradies.
that was funny. So I want to touch on, I mentioned this earlier, that I want to touch on the sustainability approach, and it's something we'll dig deeper in with Francis on Sunday night. But I don't see them reusing materials or separating waste into different bins. I just see big skips.
Yep.
It's something that I know in my business, we try and separate waste into different streams so that it can be processed more efficiently. It'd be interesting to see if they do have some sort of environmental policy on the construction process.
Back on the second or third episode, I think it was the second episode last week, when they're pulling off all the roof tiles, they were smashing them up. They're going away to be crushed, and then they're going to be used like a crushed rock that goes under the concrete. So they're talking about that. Yeah, so that's going in. I actually made note of that last week. Interestingly enough, if you have a look what's coming off the place, it's mainly timber. There's obviously plaster, but I noted as well that not all the skips are in the driveway. So I don't know whether it's the layout. So maybe they haven't just talked about it yet, but some of the skip separation doesn't look like everything's going into one skip. We know last year they reused bricks, and they're all crushed and used as a base. So if you remember out in Gisborne there, it was all muddy and stuff. They crushed it and came back, and they created roads with it. And so, yeah, I don't know whether this particular job demands all the same things, but it is a good question. And I think that they will bring it up as it goes on. One other little thing that my wife noticed, different sponsor this year. There was a little thing that's a major thing. Did you happen to pick up what it was, Russ?
No, I did not. Always interested to find out your little secrets.
Well, I didn't notice, but my wife, she's a corporate accountant. She notices everything, anything to do with figures and planning and structure. She goes, hey, Suncorp aren't doing it this year. It's Combank. And so they use it. Yeah. So it's been
interesting
Suncorp since for now.
Hey, that's a good segue, because one of the articles that was in the news this week was that excuse me, valuations in Hampton East have dropped since they started production.
Yep.
And I'd be very surprised if they're going to reach the kind of dollars that they're going to spend on these. So the return on their investment, I'm not 100% sure.
Okay. So generally, that there's a thing called data lag. It's a bit over 3 months. So what you will have is them reporting possibly that report coming out from what happened coming up to Christmas or just after. And a big part of that will come about because of lack of supply at the moment. So there's a dip, but at the moment, as the articles I've been reading on property, they're still, for well-presented properties, they're still going up. And with these homes, there'll be no direct comparison for them to work off. So that's actually how you get data. So that I'll be really interested at about probably week 10. We'll be looking more closely because then I know that we're coming into spring selling season, and I'm pretty aware of that because that's what we're dealing with at the moment. So winter is used as a time for vendors, open up the first week. So we've had a couple of things. So the past two RBA meetings, there's been no rate rises. Inflation starting to come under control based on articles that I've been reading and opinion from those who actually deal in that area. So I just feel that some of the the data is probably about 3 months out.
Yeah. I'm still concerned, but let's see. Hey, it's a good segue for us to just talk about an article, they mentioned this on the show. So let me just add this to the stream. The article was, they mentioned it was a domain ad to say that the listings, excuse me, for the block are now up on domain. So as you can see, we're now starting to see the final renders of these properties. They're not the finished properties; these are renders. So we get to see house one, which is Kyle and Leslie. So it's got this white front. Now, if I recall, that's facing south, maybe southeast. This one would also be facing southeast. This one, I think, is the corner block. So the corner is on the right-hand side and to the front of you. I have seen these. I went around. This one would be facing east, I think. And the last one also facing east, all in Charming Street. So what are your takes on these renders, Pete? These are the first times that I've seen them.
The house one, if you could load that up so that everyone
can
see it. So house one, they're actually broken with tradition. So currently at the moment, most places are being painted like a grey or a charcoal. But they've gone for white. It's quite bold. To me, I don't know how I feel about that yet. It feels like a great big garage with an appendage. And it's only in the rendered form. I don't dislike it, but it reminds me of my dad's garage at home, just painted white. And so I'll be really interested to see how that comes along and whether they choose to go with that colour as well. Because I'll tell you something, staring at it from the front, you'll need about 300 sunblock because that thing is going to reflect light like it's, what's that telescope out in space? The Hubble. That's going to reflect.
James Webb, mate. James Webb.
Yeah, very much so. Next one down, Lee and Ash's house. I do love timber and I like the contrast. I don't mind the concentric lines that I'm assuming that's the garage on the left. Interesting thing with timber, so we can see it covering over the glass. And we're going to see it on house 3, which is Kirsty and Brett's, is cleaning the glass and maintaining something like that is hard work. It's a whole bunch of hard work, unless they've got a pivot or something where you can take it off the glass and get to it. And then what happens over time, it just gets dirty and yucky. And also maintaining that amount of timber, unless it's like a mountain ash where it's designed to fade into its nice thing. But I like them. I probably like 2 a little bit more than 3.
I like the cantilever of 3. I think that's pretty amazing.
Yeah,
and
technology-wise is awesome.
And I like the lighting of number 2, but admittedly, this is a render. So it's not the finished product. but you'd normally have a pretty good idea of what the final product's going to look like, and then you build towards that. So, any other comments on house 3 before we get to 4 and 5?
Oh, I do love the cantilever.
Yeah.
If you actually understand engineering, oh my goodness, it's just so good.
I think I have to say, I think house number 4 probably, I think it might fit into the area a little better than the others, just from the renders that I see. What are your thoughts?
To be honest with you, any one of those phones reminds me more of a Bow Morris area than a Hampton East. So if you know some of the streets around Bow Morris where there's still got a fair bit of tree cover, they have a lot of bottle brush, a lot of tea tree. I could see these nestled into some of those areas, or if you've ever been down to Phillip Island, just some of the streets that run off cows. This is a Monty for that area. And so I really like
it. I think these houses would fit perfectly in that Bow Morris area. I agree 100%. Bow Morris is just walking around Bow Morris. I do that a lot.
Yeah.
So I think you're right. I grew up in a little country town called Sandy Point in South Gippsland, and I think that all of these houses would fit perfectly in that location. And interestingly, you'd probably get the right amount of money for a place down near the beach.
Oh, totally. Totally. In fact, when the houses are this expensive, it's not a location, it's a locale. Just not calling that you had. So having a look at 20 Charming Street, which is Stephen Gian's, to me that represents Hampton East.
Yeah.
In this area. It's a modern interpretation of already there. And I'm saying any one of these homes, I would be delighted to live in, to be honest with you. But if I was living in Charming Street, that for me feels, number 20 Charming Street feels like the area already.
I tend to agree. At some point, probably in the next couple of weeks, we'll probably make a trip there together and get some photos that we can share online. I don't want to.
I think we should do a video down there too.
Yeah, maybe do it. That would be a good idea. I just want to. I don't want to give away too much too early. I want us to reveal things as the show is revealing them, and these are just renders, so they're not the finished product. If we'd had finished product photos published by the producers, then I probably would then maybe talk about those. But at this point, I like the cadence of just a slow release.
Disclosure.
Anything on number 5 before we wrap it up for the evening?
Once again, I absolutely love the look of the timber around the garage area and the entrance. It's I don't know. I love the earthy tones. The top part reminds me of what's happening in Caulfield a lot, or even down in Bentley or East Bentley, which isn't too far from where we are now. I don't know that I'm loving the top as much as I love the bottom. And that one, to me, I don't know. It feels, a bit like a square peg in a round hole. What do you think, Russ?
I think this one's a bit. It feels a little bit odd to me, but maybe it's just the angle that the render has been taken. So,
and also,
we'll see.
We don't know what the colours are going to be yet.
No.
So, one of the great things we've turned many a property from one thing to another, from just quite an ugly duckling to something super desirable by painting. And so when we're styling for a property, we tend to use 3 different colours on the front. So there's one that's always super subtle, one that covers most of it, and one's what we call a focal point, or we call a framing colour, that gives it the width and the depth. And so who knows what they're going to do yet? I'm sure they're going to come up with something that'll knock our socks off.
Interesting. Hey, Pete, if people are interested in presenting their homes for sale, how would people best reach out to you?
Okay, go online, presentinghomesaustralia.com.au. There you got all my contact details. I can email, call directly out of the website. Alternatively, you can find me on Insta or Facebook on Presenting Homes Australia. Or if you look at my long name there, you can find me on Facebook. And yeah, pretty much that's it.
Hey, Pete, thanks again for your insights into the block for this season. That wraps up episode 8 of season 19. I look forward to catching up with you on Sunday night, where we get to talk about the room reveals. And we'll be joined by Frances Cosway, who's one of the Australia's leading interior designers. And when she appeared last Sunday night, it's one of our most popular shows yet. People have been commenting on her insight and having worked with her. So I'm really excited to learn what she's got to share. So thanks for those of you who are watching. Really appreciate your support. Click like if you've liked what we've talked about. Feel free to share it amongst your social feeds. And we look forward to seeing you on Sunday night.
Take care.